Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namandas. Naman. Good morning. We're at a very critical time in human history. Many things need to be changed in order for our society and actually our Earth to survive. But before we can change the world, we must change ourselves. Or we must allow our minds to be changed. So how does that happen? The title of this talk is taken from Dr. Taitetsu Unno's book, Shin Buddhism, Bits of Rubble Turned into Gold. It's from the Chinese Pure Land master, Tzu Min, who in the 8th century wrote a poem. And in it, he talks about the vow of the Buddha and that the Buddha's compassion can make bits of rubble turn into gold. And he says this: when beings hear my name and think on me, not discriminating between inferior and gifted, those who follow precepts or break them, solely making beings turn around and abundantly saying the Nembutsu, I can make bits of rubble turn into gold. And this is what Tzu Min is saying that the Buddha is thinking. Now, last week we talked about all beings turned into the color of gold and a beautiful appearance. This merely representing that we're all valuable and we're all the same. So the Buddha sees us as gold. And what does that mean? Let's look at several situations. Again, Dr. Taitetsu Unno in his first book says this: the fundamental purpose of the name as Namo Amida Buddha is awakening to the incomparable worth of this unrepeatable life, this limited finite life that is inseparable from infinite boundless life. I think that Dr. Unno and Tzu Min are saying that as we say the Buddha's name, Namo Amida Buddha, we have a different view of our life. And it doesn't matter if we're rich or poor, intelligent or not so bright, morally good or even evil. We are like bits of rubble, but we can all be turned into gold. And this means that we can see the world from the view of the Buddha. When we see life from our own single egocentric view of life, it's from the view of greed, hatred, and ignorance. And we're thinking only of ourselves. But as we grow in maturity, we include others, our family and friends. Some of us can include larger groups of people, like the Temple Sangha or other large groups. And many of us volunteer in different groups to help others. But the Buddha's view is much larger. We've heard the expression, can't see the forest through the trees. If we're in the forest, all we see kind of are trees. But if we're on a hillside and we look out on the landscape, we could see the forest. In other words, the further back we go, the larger our view. Now, what is the view of the Buddha? Sir Richard Branson just flew into the edge of space last week. And he was able to experience weightlessness. And he and his crew were able to see the Earth from the edge of space. And later, he talked about a book written by a person who interviewed most of the astronauts who had gone into space. And this was about 500 different people. And they all had a unique but similar experience. And their experience is different from what we've seen in photos and videos, because they actually experienced something much different than what we might see in a video. And what they experienced being in space was that they were seeing the Earth down below. And beyond that, there was the dark universe, space itself. And they saw how small and fragile the Earth is. And so they saw the Earth from the heavens, just like the Buddha. And so we go back to what Dr. Unno said in his book, that we have an incomparable worth of this unrepeatable life, this limited finite life. And then what we realize is that this finite life is inseparable from the boundless infinite life. And they experience this whole thing because of the efforts of others. And we Shin Buddhists call this the compassion of Amida Buddha, the efforts of others. So these astronauts in space saw the Earth and realized that they were in space because of all the causes and conditions and the efforts of others, what we call the compassion of Buddha, allowed them to see Earth from a much larger view than any of us have been able to see. So how does this change happen? You know, we could look at some stories. The Buddha talked about two brothers, one Mahapanthaka, who was very capable and intelligent. And he had a brother, Kulapanthaka, who was a little dim-witted and a little slow. He couldn't even remember the sutras. But the Buddha had compassion for him. And so he had Kulapanthaka and asked him to sweep the yard. And he says, as you sweep the yard, think about these words. Take away the dirt, sweep away the dust. Take away the dirt, sweep away the dust. And so Kulapanthaka did that. He wasn't smart enough to read the sutras and remember them and, you know, have a deep philosophical insight, but he just did this little action of sweeping the yard. And he kept saying, sweep away the dirt, sweep away the dust. Now, dust and dirt represent our defilements, our kleshas. And just sweeping and thinking about these words, Kulapanthaka had a breakthrough, and he realized truth. And the truth was that he was connected to everlasting life by no effort on his part. So our awakening doesn't need to be a deep philosophical insight. Just by saying thank you, every time we just receive a gift, something that's ordinary. We realize that it comes from the efforts of others. We're sweeping away dirt and dust. This simple thing of just saying thank you is like sweeping away the dirt and dust. Ichitaro, the Myokunin, says this: the land of bliss is found everywhere, on a vegetable leaf, on a plate of grass, on a sardine. Without saying whether a thing is good or bad, if you sense the working of Amida in and on each thing, this is the truth freed of good and bad things. All good and bad things are products of one's thoughts. Namo Amida Buddha. So again, we do not change anything to fit our desires. We change our minds to fit reality. And this happens slowly, sometimes. And just by doing these incremental things, we realize that our minds are changed for us, sweeping away the dirt and dust. Just by saying thank you, we see that we are bits of rubble and we are turned to gold. And with that, let us express our deepest appreciation by reciting the Nembutsu as though we are sweeping the dust and dirt from our minds. Please join me. Gassho. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Nammandas.